Well, Stuart and I are entitling this 3, 2, 1, it's spring, because it really feels like spring. And case in point, Stuart, look above you. Look at those fat buds on my Chinese snowball viburnum. It's just going to be stupendous this year. I can't wait for that. And it does, some of you have asked, does it put out the blooms and then the leaves? And yes, it does. So you can see some tiny leaves emerging. But today I want to talk about 3 really quick and easy spring projects that you can do that I think could make kind of a major transformative new vibe in your garden. So let's talk about that a little bit. But first, my question of the day, as promised, it's the same as yesterday. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can always count on you guys for fabulous ideas. And it's going to take a while. Carrie, my assistant, is going to go through and she's going to kind of go through all of your responses before I have my meeting next week for your QVC product recommendations. Some of them may be wonderful, but for one reason or another, supply issues can't be brought to fruition. But nevertheless, you guys are giving me just such great ideas. So one idea that I have that I'd kind of like your feedback on. I will show you these later in the fashion epilogue, but some of you have seen these foot form Madden Girl sandals that I have that are waterproof, weatherproof. I've had these for years and I think they're just really cute. So anyhow, I'm thinking about having something like this in my product line. Let me know if that's thumbs up or thumbs down, but they're also really comfy to wear around the house. And I like them because to wash them, I just put them in the dishwasher. So, okay, so there's my long-winded question of the day. Thank you, thank you. Now, my first tip is garden accessorizing. And in my book, Stuart, kind of pan around and show some of the different garden accessories I've got here. In my book, I have a whole section devoted just to garden accessories. Everything from finials, cloches, cages, tutors, wire forms for topiary, birdhouses, all of that. And I talk a little bit about my philosophy on garden ornament, but you can see here that I've got some garden ornaments already going, and to me the best garden ornaments are those things that are both beautiful but also functional. And so, for example, these cloches, which I'm going to talk about again in a minute, these finials, which were part of my QVC line last year and sold out rather quickly, but I want to mention something about those again shortly. And then things like baskets and such that you guys have seen me use in and around the garden. Now, one person commented on the QVC baskets that they wish they were in brown and they weren't exactly the color that they like. Well, what I do is I just get them dirty. To me, almost the color of anything can be changed just by getting mucked up or painted, and that leads me to talking about garden ornaments and this first easy project. So my number one thing is, and I've walked back here into the shade because it is kind of hot and sunny, but also the light is a little bit glaring, and Stuart and I apologize because we were going to do this early when the light was softer, but then we both wanted to sleep in. So the light is a little bit harsher and it's a little bit windier. Nevertheless, speaking of wind, I need to take a drink of water. Hold on. So I've talked ad nauseum about how I'm trying to make my garden look a little bit less cluttered this year because I had too many pots, maybe too many garden ornaments and things. And so this year I'm trying to have it be a little bit more streamlined, elegant, and harmonious. And to do that, one of the things that I'm going to do is not have so many different finishes, metallic finishes in my garden. The problem is it's hard to choose. If you're like me, it's really hard to choose between black like this or a galvanized finish like this cloche, or in the distance you can see some of my copper plant supports. Those are part of my QVC line, and I'm so glad those are back in, you guys. So So part of that is it just looks to me a little bit disharmonious and isn't consonant as a space when there's too many metallic finishes. So, and it's one of the reasons in my Linda Vater signature line that I typically in everything I have 3 different finishes, thinking that you could buy something as a suite. So you could get a suite of all the copper ornaments, or a suite of all galvanized, or a suite of all black metal. But that said, we all have different metal things in our garden that have different finishes, and we like them all, but there's just too many different finishes. So that leads me to the power of spray paint. Now, listen, I know you guys, we're all kind of the same, and we kind of like to do fun garden projects. This isn't brilliant. I'm no genius. I'm well aware of that. But sometimes it bears repeating that we think that we can do aha things like, oh, I can move that pot, or I can paint something. And so I'm kind of on a painting spree this weekend with some of my different wire things. Now, some of my favorite things to paint some of my favorite spray paint colors are, so number 1, I love this flat burnished amber. I don't have the lid to this, but this is just a hammered galvanized metal, so it makes it look like galvanized metal. I love also a spray paint that will simulate moss. This one, what's the color of this one? Moss green. Okay, there you go. And then I like just matte black. I also like copper, but I don't have that. So I've got lots of things like this wire basket that are in just different colors. And so what I'll do is I will take, and I did some of this yesterday, I took some of my wire cloches. Now these came from Gardener's Supply. I've had these for years, and I don't know if they're still available or not. And I am trying to have my own version of garden cloches in my collection. I'm not sure the status of that, but I'll check on that. But these are galvanized metal, and I want a little bit more, this year I want a little bit more, less rustic, a little bit more maybe high-end elegant, since the title of my book, The Elegant and Edible Garden. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting a spray paint sheen on these, and what I'm doing is, so that it'll kind of match everything, what I'm doing is spraying them with matte black, and then I'm coming back in with some of this burnished amber. But you guys, it doesn't, you can't make a mistake. It's kind of like when I aged some pots last year, you kind of can't make a mistake. The overall effect is just to darken them. So here's what it started out like, just this kind of aged galvanized metal. And then Stuart, if I can get you to back up without tripping, this is kind of what it looked like after, and it's just basically dark. I even let some of the galvanized metal, side by side. Thank you, Stuart. I let some of the galvanized metal show through so that it just darkens them up a little bit. And you'll also, I don't know if you can tell very well, but what I sprayed on them, some of that burnished amber, gives it a little tiny bit of a sheen, and this doesn't really have much sheen. So that captures the light and I think looks pretty. Do you agree, Stuart? Okay, so you can see here, I've got this protecting these cloches, protecting the ground where I planted some French breakfast radishes, and I am keeping these on here to protect them from marauding squirrels, my nemesis. And so those 2-part cloches, I'm also going to spray those. And the one that's sitting inside of my basket there, that has a bucket inside of it, I have greens, just some lettuce greens planted in that bucket, and I've got one of those cloches on it that I have also spray painted. So that way, instead of having 3 different finishes here, in galvanized, in black, and in copper, I'll restrict it to kind of 2, probably to copper and just dark, which could kind of read black or blackish umber or whatever, because I've got these black tutors, and I've got black lanterns and black hangers, And so that way I won't have too many different finishes going. So that's my easy #1 project, is just spray paint it. And that would include things like baskets, like pots, like pretty much anything you have that just isn't in the color that you want. It might be a Goodwill find, and you find you haven't been using it because it wasn't in the color you want. Well, I have found just spray paint it. And I don't worry a lot about primer and things, because if it sloughs off a bit, if it wears, if it ages, that's fine with me. It just gives it that weathered antique look that I really, really like. So, okay, Stuart, do you have any questions on that one, Stuart?
I do not.
Okay, and by the way, I'm out of some of my favorite spray paints. I'm going to have to go and get some more. And that way you can make, it's instant gratification, you guys. You can transform something really, really quickly in very short order. So now let's go on to my second really quick and easy project. Well, here is my #2 project, and I'm calling it Just Play with Seeds, because one of my favorite expressions is some things are just gardening risks worth taking, and I think a $1 or $2 package of seeds is a wonderful gardening risk worth taking. So get some seeds that you think are just really fun and experiment with them. Now, this isn't about really getting the highest yield out of the smallest space, or it may not even work. I have done lots of seed experiments that didn't work, but I've had some that just turned out to be really fun. And whether or not that success was because of conditions, or if it was because of Mother Nature, or it was just because the planets were aligned, I don't know. But again, it's a fun 99 cents or $2 risk worth taking. It's also great to do with any kind of seeds that you have that might be about to expire, or you're not sure if they are still viable or they're old or whatever. I've done that with those. And it's also a very, very fun thing to do with kiddos. And a lot of you have asked, so what kind of seeds am I planting this year? And I'll talk a little bit more about it later. Again, I wrote a section in my book about it, and that is my affection and my kind of obsession now with mini vegetables. So I will be planting later some mini vegetables. I think they're fun. I think of that as dollhouse gardening. Hashtag dollhouse gardening. But I wanted to show you this. So you guys may have known that I'm a partner with Brex Bulbs, and I also work with Color Blends bulbs, and I had way too many to plant in the ground, so I had these 2 massive pots that I just kept outside. I wasn't sure whether or not the bulbs in the pots would do well, but they did brilliantly. And I think it's because the pots are very large. The pots are all weatherproof. They're fiberglass. Stuart just helped me lift them up onto these plant stands, which I think kind of enhances their look. And also you'll notice that they're in that dark finish or black, so they will blend in with my other garden ornaments. And Stuart, I have to give you a kudos. Stuart is so good. About some things I'm not fastidious at all, but about other things I'm very fastidious. And Stuart, because he is young and strong, he a lot of times has to help me move pots or lift pots. And Stuart, thank you for never making fun of me for being overly fastidious and kind of moving things from one point to another point, maybe 3.
My pleasure.
3 inches. He's very patient about that. Thank you, Stuart. So you may wonder, what do these flower bulbs have to do with seeds? So these are Party Punch, and I think a Party Punch and a Dordogne blend from 2 different blends from Brex and Color Blends. And I think they're going to be absolutely fabulous when these bloom, because flanking the entrance into the boxwood circle. And by the way, even though it's got a lot of growing out to do, Victor really did a great job in helping me prune the boxwood hedge, and I think it looks really nice, even though it's got a lot of recovery. And by the way, next week I'm going to do one on just care, fertilizing, and pruning of boxwood. But I digress. But along here, along the brick path, there's also Party Punch bulbs from Brex, and those are what's in this pot here. It is what's in a large pot in the back. The Party Punch bulbs are also in this large barrel, but I guess the whole point of this, it is also what is just stuffed into these two pots. So imagine all of these in bloom simultaneously or about the same time. So how does that come up with my seed experimentation? Well, I think I told you that I was having trouble getting poppies to germinate in my garden bed, either because it was just too dry or I'm not sure why. So I had so many poppy seeds, I thought, you know what, I'm going to sprinkle some poppy seeds in these pots, and you can see I didn't do a very good job of sprinkling them. They're sprinkled way too densely in here, in both pots, actually. And so here's my experiment. I think I have told you that when I plant bulbs, I don't save them to the next year. They don't reliably come back for me. So these bulbs will go into the compost pile. Now, what I'm thinking is as soon as they finish blooming, I'm going to cut down the tulips at the base here. And they won't then continue to grow on. I will put that stuff in the compost pile, but then I will still have some of these poppy seedlings in here. By that time, I only will need to have about 6 or 7 viable poppy plants in here for it to make kind of a dramatic show. I'll probably have to support them, maybe more. And then the poppies will replace, in my imagination, again, this is an experiment, it may not work, will replace the bulbs, and then after they are done, I'll put in my real hot weather flowers and other plantings. So I had all of those seeds. I have nothing to lose. It's an absolute experiment, but why not? Why not, Stuart? Maybe I'll use some of my plant tower supports to support the poppies if they come up. And again, I don't need a ton of them to be viable. I just need some of them to be viable and grow up. And I will feed them pretty aggressively to get them to grow up. So come up with your own project. Let me know what those projects are, to just use a packet of seeds in an innovative way. It can be just almost anything, but think about it, try it, see if it works, and who knows, it might give you one of those really, really fun, aha, unexpected moments when you see that some of them have germinated and at that moment in time did something miraculous. And there's nothing more exciting to me than seeing a seed germinate. And there's nothing more agonizing than seeing a seed that has germinated that has been dug up by squirrels. So anyhow, that's what gardening is all about. What is it? The agony, the sweet victory of success, and the agony of defeat, and that in essence is gardening. So anyhow, that's kind of like life too. So now let's move on to my third project, number 3. You can do very quickly and it'll be very fun. Well, when I said it was warm, I wasn't kidding. And so that's why wearing layers is important this time of year when you're gardening, so you can take something off and get a little bit cooler. And by the way, I always keep some kind of sunscreen, spray sunscreen, in my garden truck so that when I do something like I just did, I can take off my sweater and then put on a good coating of sunscreen, because I had sunscreen everywhere that was exposed, but I really didn't have it on my arms. So very, very important. Okay, my next project is I'm going to plant some living Easter pots or living Easter basket pots. And I do this, I think I do this every year. I just plant pots and baskets and containers of grasses. Now, these two large pots, I actually just planted. This larger one I planted, let's see, the larger one I planted with perennial ryegrass seed. Stuart, let's put a link in case, not annual ryegrass, though you could, but I like this perennial ryegrass seed because it's very fine bladed. It will germinate almost immediately, and then it will grow, and I'll still have time for it to grow between now and, when is Easter this year? April 17th, I think, but I should have enough time. And then it will still look good for a while, and it's just a whimsical, fun thing to have in your garden. So that's my fine bladed grass in this large pot, and then in that smaller pot I have, let's see, where is my packet of seeds? I can't find it, Stuart, but I have catgrass, which is a thick bladed grass that I've got planted in there. And that catgrass will then make a nice textural contrast, fine bladed and thick bladed, and it'll be kind of fun. And then for on Easter, I typically have Easter at my house. If the weather gods cooperate, we'll have it outside, so it will be fun for me to have these here and staged for Easter. But I also want to have some smaller ones that I can use inside on my Easter table if weather is inclement. So I'm going to plant 3 containers. These are ceramic containers. This one I like because it looks like a basket. And then I got these 2, I don't know how many years ago. And I had small clovers in here for St. Patrick's Day. I've taken those out. Those were just in pots that just were nestled in there. And now I'm going to plant these with Easter grass. Now you'll notice these do not have drainage. You could, of course, get a drill and you could put drainage holes in these, but I don't want to do that because I too often use these as flower arrangements, and I want them to remain watertight. So that tells me I am going to be very cautious and careful about not overwatering these while the seed is germinating and then while it's growing. But these are relatively short-term containers. Its contents will just end up in the compost bin afterwards. And so I'm if it works, great, and if I overwater them a little bit, that's okay too. But they're just such a fun thing to do, and again, a fun thing to do with kiddos. So it couldn't be any easier. I'm just going to put some potting soil in here. And you guys may ask what potting soil I use. This is Stay Green. I'll use just about, as long as it's a good quality potting soil. I'm not overly particular. This is one that my husband can find easily for me, and that's a sweet thing Hubs does for me, is he typically will get my potting soil for me. Sometimes Stuart does it for me, don't you, Stuart?
I have before.
Yeah, you have before. Because it's hard to have too many large bags of stuff in Dot, my little Fiat, because she's just not very big. But the other thing is, I know probably you think, why do I have a Fiat when I do gardening? Because there's so often large things that that need to be hauled around. Well, number one, it gives me an excuse to have Hubs help me, and I don't have to do it myself. And secondly, I have a relatively small garden, and so Dot is kind of, she's proportionate to my relatively small garden, I guess. So all I did was just put some dirt in there. Now, in addition to grass seed, here is another kind of a spin-off of my second project, and that is just experiment with different kinds of seeds. And I have successfully done These were really fun. One year for Channel 4, one of my Channel 4 projects, I did baskets of little mesclun mix of baby lettuces. You could do these microgreens. I have used those really successfully. That was very fun. You could do arugula. You could do any kind of mixed green. Let's see, what else do I have in here that might be fun? If you could buy starts of parsley. These are my parsley seeds that I've germinated, but you could buy starts of parsley and you could plant them already from a 6-pack or something and use that as a living Easter basket. I have used black-seeded Simpson yellow lettuce. That is fun. So you could use almost anything in which you can nestle Easter goodies, tiny little Easter bunnies, anything like that. It's just, it really is the one time of year I would say I channel my inner child, because I think it's just a fun thing to do. But in these, I have so many greens planted in other baskets and things, and in the garden beds in the potager, that these I'm just going to do grass. So in these 2 like ones, I am going to just do this perennial rye grass. And you can plant it, and by the way, I had this from last year. I know some of you are thinking she doesn't have real grass in the yard, but she grows grass in pots. Does that seem a little strange, Stuart?
It's pure Linda.
It's pure Linda. But it's so fun when this germinates and there's just those little tufts of green that start coming out. So I'm planting this very densely. So this bag I got last year. So I think it's very much still viable. I've kept it in a cool, dark, dry place. So I think it's very viable. But in case only 50% of it was viable, that's why I'm planting it rather densely. And it's an inexpensive project to do. And I will do exactly the same thing in this pot. Now I'm going to cover this with just a little bit more potting soil, but very thinly, very thinly. And then, you guys, what I'm going to do is ever so gently, with the spray hose in my kitchen sink, or the spray device in my kitchen sink, I'm going to very gently moisten this. But I'm not going to overly saturate it. I'm just going to make sure that it's pretty moist without being soggy. Then I'm going to take this, I'm going to put both of these, or actually all 3 of these. This one I'm going to plant with something else, maybe those microgreens. But I'm going to put these on my stove, and then when I roast my next batch of vegetables, which I think I need to do a video on, Stuart, because I was telling you that I want you to eat more healthily. Do I boss you? Do I bully you, Stuart? And so I'm going to roast some vegetables, and I will keep these on the stove, wet or moistened down. I'll cover them, and that residual ambient heat on the bottom, that will make this germinate, I would say, in 2 to 3 days. The minute it germinates, I will remove the newspaper or the plastic or whatever I have that's on top to keep in the moisture. I will then remove it from the stove, and I will put it either outside and protected, or in a very, very bright window inside protected, and make sure that it stays moist, and then just let it grow. And I promise you, I will show you any kind of progress, how it's doing, but it gives me such a chlorophyllic rush when it germinates, and then I can style them for Easter. So of course I'll show you that too. And then again, if the weather gods are cooperative, then I'll set this table for Easter, and these will be part of my tablescape for Easter, which I of course will share with you. So that is my third 3, 2, 1 spring garden project for you. Please let me know if you try it, if you've done it in the past. It's such a fun, easy thing to do, and again, such a fun thing to do with your little grands, or with your kiddos, or with your photographer. So there you go. Let me know if you try these projects, and enjoy the beautiful weekend. Well, well, here you go. Here's your fashion epilogue for today. My sweater is from Anthropologie. I got it on sale several years ago, and let me tell you, I'm probably getting ready to take it off because, Stuart, it is muggy and hot out today, which is probably a precursor to the 100% chance of rain we have tomorrow, so that's okay. My shirt underneath it is Goodwill. It was originally H&M, and this is a sleeveless top, and I love sleeveless tops because I can wear them easily and comfortably under blazers and jackets and sweaters like this without it getting kind of too bunched up. So it's a category of things that I always look for when I go thrifting. I think my bandana is just a lucky bandana. I have these in all different colors, you guys know. When it starts getting really hot, I wet them down when I wear them, but also it kind of protects my neck and such from sun damage. And speaking of wearing, I've got about 10 inches of sunscreen on right now. My sunglasses are Ray-Bans, Ray-Ban Aviators, classic Ray-Ban Aviators. My gorgeous earrings. You guys know I love my Atrio style earrings. These are a pair, and I have a fun idea related to that. I'm going to kind of think through because I love her work so much. My breeches are also thrifted. These are Ann Taylor Loft. I really like them. And my sandals are Madden Girl. And I've got a question to ask you about these because I've had these for years. They're so comfortable. They're waterproof. They're grungy because I've had them forever, but they are just great on hot days for slipping in and out of when you're coming in from the garden. And one more thing I wanted to show you. You guys, I was so touched. You send me such sweet notes and sometimes gifts, and I'm not saying this because I want you to do that, but when you do, it really touches me. So these I got yesterday, and I just love them. So I get this sweet, sweet note, first of all, and these are from a newly retired couple, Gail and Bruce Dwyer, who also garden in Zone 7B, and she is taking art classes at a local, I think she said community college, and look what she created. Look at these. She sent me a whole packet of these note cards, and I don't know, I guess she painted them originally and then copied them, but aren't those just brilliant? Mm-hmm. And Stuart, by the way, lest I be selfish, the note was also addressed to you as well, so it's not just me. So awesome. So if you want to take some of these cards too, look at the detail on those leaves. I just love that, and then how whimsical, how fun are these? They're just like watercolors. I don't know how she did it, but Gail, thank you so much. I was so, so touched. And Stuart always knows when I'm delighted when I open something and I let out a squeal, and I squealed when I opened these. So thank you very much, and there you go. There's your fashion epilogue for today.